Today I would like to talk to you about law number 12 of teamwork. That's the law of the bench. And the law of the bench says great teams have great depth. The law of the bench says basically if you want to have a winning team, you've got to have more than just a few people that play the game well. If you want to have a winning team in your business, you've got to have more than just a few stars on your business team. If you want to have a winning team in the agency that you lead or the department you lead, you have to have depth. You've got to have a lot of players who really play the game well. Last year I went to Florida State, Georgia Tech game here in Atlanta. And Florida State, I think at that time, was ranked number 1. Georgia Tech, I don't think at that time was ranked. And it was at the end of the third quarter, and the game was close. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, there was only 3 points difference. Now, if you've ever gone to a game with me, you realize that I don't have a lot of patience. So I don't ever see the end of a game because I'm out of there. I mean, I see part of the game, and then I go to my car and beat the traffic. I don't want to be in line when all the traffic leaves. So therefore, I've never seen the end of a game. But they tell me that games do end. Classic examples, when I was in Washington, D.C. to do the NBA All-Star game, I had great seats, had a suite with all the other players' wives, all this stuff for the NBA All-Star game. And I watched the first 3 quarters. And then I left. And it became a great game, they told me. So I don't watch the end of the games. Not because you shouldn't watch the end of the games. I get greater joy of getting out of the parking lot than I do watching the end of the game. In other words, to say I watch the end of the game and then stand in line is not. I don't like lines. My definition of hell is a line. I mean, it doesn't have to be hot, it doesn't have to be eternal if it's just a line. You understand that? Okay. I mean, if I went to heaven and there was a line, I would ask, are there alternatives? Okay. So I'm not into lines. Okay. End of the third quarter, I look at the 3 guys brought with me. Margaret hates me to do this because I bring people to the game, and she says, John, stay to the end of the game. Some people would like to see the whole game. And I said, then they didn't want to come with me. So at the end of the third quarter, much to my reputation, I said, guys, let's go. And the guys kind of were shuffling a little slow, and I said, well, there's only 3 points difference. I said, the game's over. So what do you mean the game's over? Only 3 points. Georgia Tech's got the ball. I said, haven't you watched the game? The game's over. What do you mean the game's over? I said, it's very simple. Every play, Florida State, every play has sent a minimum of 4 up to 7 players onto the field to relieve the person who was just playing in the last down. Every play. Every play, 4, 5, 6 players. Have you watched Georgia Tech? 1 at best. Now, the reason they're doing that is because Georgia Tech doesn't have the bench that Florida State has. They don't have the depth. First string to first string, they may even match up fairly close. But when you get beyond the first string players, the depth isn't there. So I knew what was going to happen. What's going to happen in the fourth quarter? Florida State's going to win. Why are they going to win? Because they are more talented. Well, they're going to win because they're more talented depth-wise. Their players are going to be fresh because they haven't had to play the whole game. It's a classic illustration of the law of the bench. Great teams have great depth. It's impossible for you in your organization, in your company, to have a great team unless you have trained and developed players all the way down in the depth chart of your company. Now, the future of your team can be predicted on 3 things. Very simple. 1 is recruitment. Obviously, the future of your team is dependent upon who's joining the team. That's going to tell you a lot about what your future is like. The second area is training. This goes to developing the team. The future of your team is going to be based on how well you can grow your people, develop your people, mentor your people, and train your people. That's a fact. That's why you have this teamwork training video. This is a development growth tool to help people to grow in their development as a team player. Now, so you've got recruitment. You also have training. But there's another way to judge the future of your team, and that's by the losses of your team. Who's leaving? Who's coming? Who's leaving? And what are you doing to develop and train those that are there? Now, let me stop here for a moment because there's a principle that I want to teach. It's called the principle of the revolving door. Have you ever been in the lobby of a hotel? You have been. Sure you have. Stupid question. And when you see the revolving door, what do you see? People coming in, people going out. I mean, you just sit there. Here they come in, here they go out. No, that not only happens in the lobby of a hotel, that happens in a company. That happens in your business. That happens in your congregation, Pastor. People come in, people go out. I love it when every once in a while I'll talk to a pastor and he'll feel bad because he said he lost people. Of course you lose people. Everybody loses people. Don't you lose people? Yeah. You lose people in your company. You lose customers. It's not that you want to lose them, but you're going to lose them. Again, for some of you, it's a spiritual gift. But you're going to lose people. Now, the question is not, are people coming in? And the question is not, are people going out? Of course they're coming in. Of course they're going out. The question is, who's coming in? And who's going out? The principle of the revolving door says this. If, between the number and the scale of 1 to 10, if 8s are coming in and 3s are going out, you have a good future. Are you with me? The principle of the revolving door says, in reverse, if 3s are coming in and 8s are going out, your future is not bright. So the question is not, will you lose people? The question is, who will you lose? In fact, I was reading the other day about a company that every year automatically, they evaluate all their people and automatically they let the bottom 10% of their people in the company go. Because they just realize that in a year's time that the company gets fat, and so they just basically evaluate their people and lop off the bottom 10%. Now, you're going to lose people, you're going to gain people. Some are going to come in, some are going to go out. That's never the question. So when somebody says they lost somebody in the organization, the question is not did you lose somebody, the question is who did you lose? Or we gained somebody. Oh, the question is who did you gain? Your goal as a leader, as a coach of a team, is the way that you build your team and ensure the future success of it is you bring better people in than you lose. And while you're bringing better people in than you're losing, you not only get better people on your team through recruitment, you get better people on your team by training. So the question is not only who's coming in and who's going out. The other question is the ones that are on the team, what are you doing to develop them and make them better? Now that's key. So let's talk a little bit about the bench, and let's talk a little bit about development, and let's talk about the people that are on your team and what are you doing with those people on the team. Because I have written in your notes 6 reasons for believing in and building the bench. Now, here's what happens. A lot of times leaders look at their team, and if a person isn't a starter, or if they're just kind of a support role person, they have a tendency to not pour their life into them. They have a tendency not to develop them. They kind of say, well, we got to really make sure the starters are taken care of, and we got to make sure that the key people are taken care of, which is very true. And many times they lack depth because they don't have good training, good development for the people on the bench. So what I would say to you is to develop a good bench on your team, you've got to believe in your bench. You've got to believe in the players that are sitting there. And that's not always easy. The reason that's not always easy is because we've all had bad experiences with somebody who didn't carry the ball well for me. And I brought with me, because I just think this is so typical of every one of us in this room, I brought with me the function of an executive. Now just sit down and listen for a moment. Okay, here we are. As nearly everyone knows, an executive has practically nothing to do except to decide what is to be done, to tell somebody to do it, to listen to reasons why it should not be done, why it should not be done by someone else, or why it should be done in a different way, to follow up to see if the excuses from the person who should have done it are really followed through, and to follow up again to see if that person has done what they were supposed to do, only to discover that it has been done incorrectly, and to point out that it should have been done, to conclude that as long as it has been done, it may as well be left where it is, and to wonder if it is not time to get rid of a person who cannot do a thing right, and to reflect probably that he has a wife and a large family. And certainly any successor would be just as bad or maybe worse. To consider how much simpler and better the thing would have been done if one would have done it oneself. And reflect sadly that one could have done it right in 20 minutes, and as things turned out, he had to spend 2 days to find out why it has taken 3 weeks for someone else to do something wrong. Have we all been there? I've been there. Now, when that happens, there's a tendency, instead of us believing in the bench, to withdraw from the bench. And I'm going to give you 6 reasons why you need to believe and build your bench on your team. Number 1, today's bench could be tomorrow's stars. Most of the people on your bench are there because they're still young and they're learning and they're growing. And you have no idea what their potential really is. Number 2, the success of a support member, in other words, a player on the bench, the success of a support member can multiply the success of an inner circle member or a key leader. Now, that is absolutely true. Yesterday, 2 examples come immediately to my mind. My assistant, Linda Eggers, who helps serve and support me in so many incredible ways. It was close to the end of the day, and again, a lot of decisions had been made, a lot of leadership had been enacted. And at the end of the day, Linda came up with an idea of the placement of a person on our team to another place on the team where she would be, I can believe, much more effective. And I was wrestling all day with that issue, and I was mulling it over, and Linda knew this. And so Linda, all day, while she was doing stuff, and she was in some meetings with me, not in some meetings with me, she was thinking it through. And towards the end of the day, she said, John, she said, here's what I think. I think if you took that person and put him over there. And I mean, she got that far in the statement. I said, oh, my goodness, you're exactly right. In fact, I said, that's so good. Let's go right now down and talk to the person that she would be assisting. And I went down and talked to that person she'd be assisting. And he said, oh, of all the people in this organization I'd like to have to assist me, she's the one. And I mean, in what the deal took 15 seconds. Now, who thought of that idea? One of the bench players. One of the support people. I'm telling you, folks, I'm telling you. I have no idea how successful I am in the sense of what the other people around me do for me. I mean, it compounds. I'm just telling you things I know. I'm not telling you things I don't know. Yesterday, I came into this very studio because we're doing a simulcast in the fall for, oh my goodness, probably 70,000 people or whatever. Anyway, and we had to do 3 promos of the simulcast. And again, I was in a very pressed day, and I had 2:30 to about 3:15 to do a 20-minute segment, a 10-minute segment, a 5-minute segment. And I mean, I walked in here, and my simulcast team, they're all ready. Cameras are ready. Everything's perfect. All I have to do is sit down, and they just basically, one person stands beside me and tells me what I'm supposed to say. And I repeat it, and they said, that's exactly right. And I look in the camera, and boom. And 45 minutes later, I'm walking out. Now, what made that successful? What made it successful is the bench. It's those support people who went ahead and prepared the way and worked hard and planned and wrote out scripts and asked the hard questions and made sure the strategy was right. You see, it's those people that make the team successful. And what I'm saying is so many times we underestimate what the bench will do for us. And because we underestimate what the bench will do for us, we don't give it the time or the energy or the resources we need to develop the players on it. The third reason for believing and building the bench. There are more bench players than starters. There are more people in a support role than a starring role. Number 4, a bench player correctly placed will at times be more valuable than an inner circle member. When the bench is used correctly and a player is used strategically, they come in at very valuable times. I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. Number 5, a strong bench gives a leader more options. When you have a strong bench, all of a sudden you can do things that you can't do when you don't have the players. So therefore, it gives you more options, which allows you to make better decisions, and which really allows you to make what I call best decisions. And number 6, usually the bench is called upon at critical times for the team. Have you ever thought about this? The time when you need the bench the most in the game is at the most critical times. A player has fouled out. When's a player foul out in the basketball game? Usually toward the end of the game. Usually in the last 5-8 minutes when the game will be won or lost. Think about it for a moment. When's the relief pitcher brought in? That closer brought in when the score is maybe when the team is ahead 1 run, two players on the bases, 1 out. In other words, almost always when you call for a bench player, you call for them at the time where they are most, where the game is most critical. Now, all I want to say is very simple. If you believe in the bench and you build up the bench, it'll give you depth. And that depth in the fourth quarter of the game of life, in the life of your company and your organization, that bench is the one that will bring the victory to you. The law of the bench. Great teams have great depth.